Good morning, everyone. Give everybody a minute to settle in. There's still plenty of seating up front, too. Okay, well, welcome, everybody. Thank you for making it here early Friday morning. So I'm really happy to welcome you to our session. I think that we may have won the prize for longest title at NACFC this year. But I'm Lauren Tate. I'm a dietitian at Maine Health in Portland, Maine, and I work with both pediatric and adult patients. And I'm so pleased to be co-chairing this session with Emma Lyons. She's a pediatric psychologist at Children's Hospital in Colorado. So I'm just going to, our presentation disclaimer. Just review our learning objectives. We're going to describe the impact of social media on body image and explore the strategies to foster body positivity. Examine the power of social media influencers and how they shape the perception of wellness, along with the potential risks associated with following unqualified information. And employing strategies to challenge common stereotypes and assumptions about weight and health while emphasizing the importance of promoting inclusivity. I'm really excited to be here. I think that this topic is so important because it's really just prevalent in our culture these days, and especially relevant to all people living with cystic fibrosis. Our speakers have prepared some really insightful presentations, I think, that will help guide us all in providing care to our patients, but also to our patients, supporters, and family members when thinking about body image, nutrition, and social media and how they all intersect. So we will facilitate our Q&A session after all the presentations. We're going to bring our speakers back up here for a panel discussion. So please, feel free to send your questions through the app during the presentation, or jot them down and head up to the microphones at the end. And we're hoping to leave about 20 minutes to have a discussion at that time. So without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker, Lily Kristen, from the medical hospital. Hold on for 1 second. From the Medical University of South Carolina. And let's see. Okay, welcome, Lily, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for being here today. We're really excited about sharing this set of topics with you. And we have, as our last speaker, an amazing patient with CF who is really going to be the one who teaches us the most. My disclosures. I want to start out by doing a quick note on this. I'm going to be talking through a bit of a background on body image and CF. And I want to highlight that I am going to be using certain terms, so girls and women, to encompass all who identify as female, boys and men, all who identify as male. And I want to make the acknowledgement, especially in Western culture, we know a lot, especially in the psychological research, that sometimes the folks who have been focused on are not the ones who are experiencing some of the biggest challenges. And I want to just note that, especially in the area of body image study, there are a really important number of groups, these are just a couple, who are not included in the discourse and research until fairly recently. So just to identify that limitation of this presentation. I'm going to go through a little bit of an overview about body image. What is it? Social media, what is it? Sounds fairly obvious, but I want to tie these things together. And then I want to talk about how body image can be affected by social media and some of the data that we have here. I am supposed to be focusing on the dark side. However, I do want to make a quick note about some of the positives as well of social media. So when we think about body image and what it is, this is a lovely definition. So how people experience their own embodiment, especially but not exclusively their physical appearance. It's kind of our set of beliefs, our perceptions about how we see our body, our relationship with our body, its shapes, its features, how it feels to sit in our bodies. And it's a hugely important concept of ourselves. So our own relationship with our body, whether it's satisfaction, dissatisfaction, somewhere in the middle, that shapes a lot of our identity development, how we see our bodies. It's a huge part of our concept of self. I don't know if any of y'all have seen Little Miss Sunshine, but Olive here, I think, is a great example of someone who has a very positive sense of her own self, globally, as well as her body image. When we think about how body image develops, it's definitely a fluid construct. It's not something that is just you wake up one day and this is your body image. No, it forms, it evolves, it changes. And it always in interaction with a lot of different factors, our culture, our environment. Babies start to kind of take a step of awareness about their own bodies around 15 to 24 months, and they start to be curious about themselves. You'll see them looking in the mirror, checking themselves out and saying, oh, like that's me, hey. And that's kind of the first time that we start to see that sense of body image in oneself. And it's an interesting concept. It's before that, they may see themselves in the mirror, but they may not identify it as themselves. And at that critical developmental stage, that's when they first start to do that. They also start to realize that they're different than others. They have their own internal experiences and that their bodies are separate, their minds are separate from others. And this learning continues throughout one's life. And so our cognitive, social, emotional, and physical development and experiences all kind of coalesce together to form what our construct of self is in terms of our body image. There are a lot of different influences, cultural, developmental, that really are especially important in how we develop our body image. So one of the biggest ones that we'll be talking about today is cultural socialization. So what is the meaning of human appearance in our culture? There's also our interpersonal experiences, and this can't be overstated. This is a huge influence. So, while we're talking a lot about culture and social media, I want to make sure that everyone anchors in the relationships too. Our individual relationships, parents, child, care providers, we all have such an incredible power to influence and shape how people think about their bodies. And there's also our actual physical characteristics. So we go through so many changes in these temples, if you will, that we are shepherded around with in the world throughout our lives. We go through puberty, we go through our middle years, we go through our aging. And our bodies change, and as our bodies change, our minds change, and our relationships with our bodies change. There's also personality variables that I think are important to acknowledge. We all have traits of risk and resilience that can contribute to our experience of our bodies. And it's, that when we talk about that, it's kind of how do we respond to these outside influences? How do we personally either incorporate these outside influences or dismiss them over time? These are just a few of the different things that these physical changes for people with CF that may affect body image. I think a lot of times when we talk about body image, we're thinking of weight a lot of times. I think it's one of the first things people think of, but I really want to make sure that we're broadening that perspective, especially when we're talking about people with CF. There's a lot of different aspects of body image. One of the ones that I think folks commonly don't think about is voice and the experience of one's voice and some of the changes that happen with long-term lung damage. And also some of the other pieces that I think are becoming more prominent with modulators. Now, this is kind of a silly slide because I know you all, some of you all are probably on social media right now. I don't know. We all know what social media is, right? It's this set of interactive technologies. I think it's important, though, to define kind of what it is we're talking about. Because we experience, each of us here, for the most part, as social media as individuals. We're looking at it, our patients are looking at it as individuals. But I also really want to highlight that this is also for communities and organizations to participate with. So when we're seeing individuals on these social medias, it's not that we're only interacting with other individuals. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Corporation, companies, advertising. We experience it as this lovely stream, oftentimes of visual stimuli, but it's not, there's also a lot of other aspects there that we're going to talk a little bit more about that really have a big influence on the personal experience. So I want to highlight advertising, promotion, consuming, publishing, or sharing info, including fake news. And I think one of the things that social media is so interesting, just from the psychological perspective, I was actually thinking about this at the parent management training talk I went to earlier this week. This lovely set of antecedents, consequences for behavior, and that the immediacy of reinforcement is critical in shaping human behavior. And what is more immediate than getting likes on your post? How do you feel when someone likes your post or comments, "Oh my gosh, I love that picture"? It feels good. And we as human beings are shaped by that. And I think especially when the thing that we're reinforcing is something about physical appearance, that can have a really powerful impact. So there's been some studies done looking at kind of the reinforcement value of social media. It's immediate but variable feedback, which is one of the most highly reinforcing types of reinforcement. And the findings also show that people will adjust their social media behavior in response to social rewards. So one recent article termed social media as the Skinner box for the modern technology-savvy human. We're all just those little rats in a box pressing our lever, for those familiar with Skinner. This is also, again, fairly obvious. You all know this. Social media is everywhere. 1997 was one of the first social media platforms to come out. And now I thought that this particular table here from the Pew Research Center was even I'm surprised by it. Even though I know that this is true, but for teens, you see this table here, 46% of teens today say that they're using social media almost constantly. So thinking about the reinforcement pieces there and the stimuli that they're getting, this is a constant use, and it's not just for our younger generations. U.S. adults are using all forms of social media, and even, I think there's a lot of stigma around ageism in our culture, but even our older folks are using social media at very high rates. So, this is not a young person problem or concern. This is something we should be thinking about with all of our patients. So answering the question, does social media impact body image? The answer is resoundingly yes. These are just some of the many, many, many studies out there that highlight this, and I just want to hammer home a few quick points. We know that teens who use more social media have poorer body image, and viewing social media appearance ideal images, so these kind of visual stimuli, contribute to poorer body image via some really great meta-analyses. We also know that this is a study on women, but those who take and post selfies have higher anxiety, lower confidence, and decreased feelings of being physically attractive. And I included this last highlight here because I do want us to know that things can change. There is a way for this to not just be the way it is. And reducing social media use with a 4-week intervention for some teens with emotional distress significantly improved body image. So there is some hope. Although the interventions are currently very limited. We'll note that as well. So when people with CF, we know that youth with CF use all types of social media. Most teens with CF overestimate their body size currently. And we know that people with CF are at increased risk for self-scrutiny about their bodies and disordered eating behaviors. And so I just want to really be clear that this is something that we should be caring about with our patients. So answering the question of how does social media shape our perceptions of our bodies, there's so many theories out there about self and kind of embodiment of self. And I really like this very relatively simple construct answering who am I from acceptance and commitment therapy and some of the related theories. You know, we each have this intertwined psychological and physical self. They're very closely linked, and our self is just this big mixed up melting pot of all of our experiences. But we also have this consistent fixed point of reference. Our bodies are one tool of consistency that we relate to the world around. And so we all have a sense of self. Once we have it, we can't make it go away. And each of you has this anchor. You're all sitting here. You can even notice right now, notice your body. You are sitting in a chair in this room. You are either paying attention or delightfully dozing off and dreaming of what you're going to do later today. You're drinking some coffee, perhaps. Notice how that feels. Feels great. And your body is helping you experience this world you're in. And we have these three layers here in this theory of how our bodies and ourselves are defined. And one of the most, I think, the foundational piece is self as content. So this is the lowest level here. And this is the more kind of shallow or initial go at experiencing the world. We all have quick judgments. We all place things in categories quickly. Just the content of our experience, are the identities we wear. I'm a mom. I'm a psychologist. Right now, I'm a speaker. It's like these kind of labels, if you will, that we wear. And this also is about self-evaluation too. So how we label ourselves. So I am smart. I am kind. I am X, Y, and Z type of person. This applies to physical labels too. I am fat. I am thin. This is how I experience the world. But we also have self as process. So this is kind of the next step up in our self-understanding is how our bodies and our minds and our experiences shape and change over time. And this is continually changing. So our identities, our labels, all of this is changing over time. And self as context is kind of, with anyone who's familiar with acceptance and commitment therapy, is familiar with this idea that we are the context within all of our life experiences. It is our content plus process in context. So really going past the labels, even though our experiences are constantly changing, there's always this consistent you. And you're able to notice those changes about the world, but also working to not get caught up in the content and these snap judgments we make about ourselves or sometimes the world. Ourselves, though, again, I know we've talked about this a bit already, but we cannot have ourselves be separate from a few important factors. This is just two, but really highlighting these ideals of cultural attractiveness. We are not separate from that. Ourselves exist in this larger socio-historical and socio-cultural context. Thinness and muscularity in Western culture are the things that are really highlighted and are shown in social media many times as the ideals. This is, again, different cultures have different values. And also over time, the ideals of beauty and handsomeness have changed a great deal. If you can look at some of those pictures, the beauty standards of today are different than they were 50 years ago in Western culture. We also know that the historical context is so huge here. Social media use has increased dramatically, and actually really dramatically since the pandemic. There's also now a job we have in this world, if you think back, like the job of influencer. I think I saw one study that said 1 in 4 Gen Zs want to become an influencer. That's pretty wild. Like back in the day when I was growing up, it's like, I want to be a psychologist or a doctor or a dietitian, you know? But influencer is a hot job these days. So our culture and the era that we live in plays a big role. I want to highlight real quick, I could do an entire talk on this paper, but it's a really beautiful one about, it's a theory of developmental and cultural influences on girls and social media use, kind of thinking through very specific, theoretically backed factors that kind of explain why some of these important influences can lead to some serious consequences you'll see downstream here: body image concerns, mental health concerns, including disordered eating. But I do want to just draw attention to the circle here to highlight a few factors. We've talked about some of the gender-related sociocultural pressures. We've talked about the social media features. It's very visual. It's available 24/7. It's a great deal of feedback that you get. And I want to just note again that for teens, we have a vulnerable population too, because they are going through these developmental processes that make them especially vulnerable to some of the influences here. There's a huge salience of paying attention for the first time to peers and others in the world and wanting to be more like them. And this is also happening at a time when these teens are dealing with so many body changes on their own. So they're experiencing their bodies as different, really different for the first time in many important ways. I also want to briefly touch on objectification theory. This is something that, again, I encourage you to read more about if you're interested in these topics. Objectification is this act of making someone into something, treating a person or usually a woman in these theories as an object or a thing devoid of thoughts and feelings, and reducing women to objects of sexual pleasure or gratification. Part of why I wanted to bring this up is that, once you have this lens and you look at media, try to use a critical eye. Try to see when women are made into objects or are objectified. I'll give you a few examples in a minute. And it really reinforces that the value of the person is based on appearance and not on the human being underneath. Self-objectification is also an important term, and many of our patients are doing this constantly, where they are viewing themselves as objects or parts. And we as medical teams contribute to that. We are very focused on their bodies and what their bodies are doing, what their bodies are weighing, what their bodies are looking like, what their bodies' labs values are. And it is so important that we also take a step back and realize that we have a power to contribute to helping them not self-objectify and really viewing themselves as a broader, more deep human being. So self-objectification is something that, it's really monitoring one's appearance to see how one's body aligns with either culturally defined ideals of attractiveness or how others want one to be. So just to highlight some of the impact that this can have, I love this quote. Barbara Fredrickson is was at UNC for a long time. I think she may still be, but she is the pioneer researcher in this area. This quote is, I think, very powerful. We posit that in a culture that objectifies the female body, whatever girls and women do, the potential always exists for their thoughts and actions to be interrupted by images of how their bodies appear. So thinking about experiencing other positive experiences, joy, happiness, other even sorrow, the daily routine is interrupted by, how do I look? Should I take a selfie? What am I looking like to other people? And this constant self-monitoring can be exhausting, and social media amplifies that. These are just a few. You guys you've seen all of these for your whole lives, been saturated in them. These are actually more paper ads. Now we've moved on to, a lot of social media ads and more video-based advertisements. But take a look here. What is the theme here? These women are portrayed as submissive, beautiful, in positions of of power, I would say. I wonder who these are tailored towards, who might want to buy, let's see, shredded wheat, sexy shredded wheat. I mean, I don't know if anyone else thinks that shredded wheat is sexy, but you're wanted to think that after seeing this ad. In recent years, there's been a move towards what's being called hunkvertising. So using men as sexual objects. It's kind of a funny term, but this quote is really, I think, important. Objectifying men alongside women isn't progress. If it's equality, it's not the one kind we want. Using the human body to make money is really not the direction we want to be going. And it's really founded in some really kind of gross principles of capitalism and money making. And I think that the thing to keep in mind is that a lot of what people see, a lot of what we consume, is around making money and corporations money. And, I think like we can take that step back and kind of reflect on that and just really acknowledge that impact. And also realize that our patients are like submerged in this 24/7. There's so much to go into here, but I do want to touch briefly on the power of appearance-based social media. This construct is really about the visual media. So talking what is it now? X. I left it when it was still Twitter, but that's a lot more word-based social media. I'm talking about like the TikTok, the Instagram here, like with a lot of the visuals. But this appearance-based social media has a lot of power to increase body surveillance and appearance comparison, this constant assessing of how one's outward appearance appears. This is, and all of our patients are doing this constantly. And, they're doing some of the self-objectification, applying negative stereotypes to themselves. That can lead to poor body image, unhealthy behaviors, and decreased awareness even of body cues like hunger. If your brain is consumed constantly by how you look instead of how you're feeling and attending to the internal states, you're not able to experience those things as profoundly. And there is some data also around reducing positive motivational states. So things that are like these positive constructs of happiness, getting into flow, motivation, being interrupted by, how do I look? Like, should I take a selfie now? That kind of cuts those experiences off. In a more profound, at the highest level of kind of a challenge here, we also have this term now, Snapchat dysphoria, where folks are even bringing in these altered images to plastic surgery offices and saying, hey, I want to look like this. Like, I want to look like my filter, and saying that this is how I want to be. And again, this is the more extreme end. But, once you start looking at yourself constantly with a filter on, you can't help but compare because it's you. And there's this consciousness, this ABSM or appearance-based social media consciousness, where folks are just constantly imagining how things will look to others before sharing. And it really can shape our own thought processes. And we know that cognitions, thoughts, our assessment of things in the world can have a huge and profound impact on our thoughts and behavior. And there's a lot of different body image cognitive distortions that might come out with your patients. This is one, there's a great manual. This is a little bit older, but the body image workbook, just some of the examples of these distortions. And we want to one of the examples I'll give is the magnifying glass. So selective attention to one's disliked features. So it doesn't matter if people think I have a nice smile because my huge nose ruins everything. And I'm just staring at that constantly and focusing on that. Our mind, though, tells us a story, and we have the power to change that. And I think, thinking about interventions is really important. We're not going to get into that with my talk today, though. I want to note again, I'm 2 minutes over. I'm going to wrap it up real quick. I could talk about this all day, and it's a real problem. It's a really passion of mine, so I'll wrap this up quickly. I want to highlight for you all to notice too that ad content is really, really targeted. They're this is from Facebook's actual FAQ page, but they're like, this is how we target our ads to the users. We use these sophisticated algorithms based on what they're clicking on, what they're looking on to target ads to you. And we all know influencers don't portray real life, though they are easily shown in home-like environments to be kind of normal people. I will end here with little Michaela. She is one of the powerful influencers out there today. Doesn't everyone want to be just like her? Look at her having so much fun with this car and this phone. Well, so sometimes the people that we're comparing ourselves to are not even a person. Little Michaela is a digitally created influencer. She's not a real person. She's forever 19. She has a couple friends who are also influencers. She has 3.5 million followers on TikTok. She has made approximately $2 million a year for her company that sells her out to various, Porsche, Dior, Calvin Klein, BMW. So Lil Michaela is one example of how dangerous this can all be. And due to lack of time, I won't talk about the positives because this is supposed to be focused on the dark side, but I'll leave you with her. And I think that just acknowledging also that the stuff that is out there isn't always even real. So we have a lot of power to be able to kind of talk with our patients about these things and really kind of get a sense of what they're consuming and also give them some interpersonally based kind of adjustments and perspectives on their body image in our conversations with them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lily. I wish we had more time. There's so much to know and understand. Welcome to the stage, Liz Reed, dietitian coming from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this talk. And thank you so much for getting up and being here. I am. Okay. There. I might have to play around with my glasses here because that's the way it is. I have no disclosures related to this presentation. And I just want to say thank you, Lily, for a dynamo presentation that was really amazing and eye-opening. And the slide that she didn't show, I hope you can show during our panel. So you should all ask for that because it really goes on how to counter some of these messages that we're all susceptible to. So the title of my talk today is something for, whoops, I skipped that. Okay, so if you didn't hear me, I want you to ask for Lily's last slide that talks about how to counter some of those messages that we get that are just impossible. They're just impossible for us to compare ourselves to, for, our patients to compare themselves to, and our caregivers. So what I hope to talk a little bit about today and enlighten us all, get us back in our bodies in the moment, is something for everybody. Okay, so I have no disclosures related to this presentation. Everybody has a story, and that story has to do with creating our image of ourselves. The story of body image for people with CF, just looking at the literature, the bulk of the literature is before CFTR modulators were widely available. People in general, if we're thinking about weight, lived at a lower body size, with women overestimating their body size and men underestimating their body size. And there was more medicalization, just because for the majority of people, the treatment from CF resulted in some things that were out of control. Clubbing and scars. They may have been born with meconium ileus that required a big operation on their birthday, and some other very visible signs of treatment of the disease. So post widespread use of CFTR modulator availability, we have more living in a changed body concerns. There's less medicalization, but it's still there. And CF is still a really needy, time-consuming disease. So some people, if we're going to focus on weight for a second, they really struggled to gain weight. And then there were some people that, despite having significant lung disease, they didn't struggle to gain weight. And they felt really discounted because some people would say, well, you don't look sick. And since modulators, there's been a group of people who struggled to gain weight, and if they qualified for one of those medications and it improved their lung health and their digestive health, they suddenly found themselves very able to gain weight, and this could be very, very disconcerting. And for all of these groups, we really can't tell anything about their body image from looking at them, because you can't tell. You can't tell if someone has a positive self-image or body image just by looking at them. And I also want to just echo something that Lily said here. With all of these topics, it's so important to listen to the voices of people who are going through this and living with CF. Go to the CF website. There's some amazing blogs. Talk about the influence of social media. Talk about the influence of gaining weight, of having a different experience since taking a modulator. I know I really enjoyed one blog where someone was really talking about their wonderland body and just getting used to that whole experience, and also talking about the experience of being able to laugh and cry at the same time, because they'd never been able to do that. They would just cough and cough. Okay, in the beginning, we are thrilled with our bodies. We're thrilled to look in the mirror, mimic ourselves. We point to our different body parts with no judgment. And our body image, the earliest formation, really comes from our caregivers. Those earliest conversations are happening at home. Children are little sponges, and they're soaking up what their parents are modeling in terms of body and food talk, forming core beliefs about food, eating, and body image. So if their parents are looking to social media, what message is that sending? Like, do they want a phone? At what age, you know? I have several parents that have confided in me their own history of disordered eating and body image issues. And we talk about modeling and how powerful it is. And those parents really need extra tools to navigate this terrain. You know, they need a language for helping their children really get in touch with their bodies, learn how it feels to have a body. You know, what does it feel like to be hungry? What does it feel like to be full? And just experiencing that, feeling tired, feeling scared, and what to do about it when your body needs rest. That's all part of taking care of your body. I had one parent who went for help for her eating disorder when she realized that her 2-year-old daughter was walking over to the commode and spitting because she'd seen her mother purging. So in the same way, if there's a parent who's taking care of their body, who's using social media appropriately, you know, I mean, I think most of us are on social media, and just learning when to turn it off, having media literacy is something great to teach your kids. You know, just saying, you know, those images really don't make me feel good about myself, so I'm going to stop looking at them. And there's some research that indicates early positive body image experiences can have a protective effect against the false images from external sources. So in CF care, it can be helpful to set some expectations right from the beginning. We are going to talk about weight a lot. We are going to talk about growth. And we want to set those expectations. And I always ask, have you ever worked with a nutritionist before? And, Is that okay? Was that a positive experience if you did, or was it a negative experience? I don't want anyone to think up front that I'm going to be the food police with their child. But I want to set just expectations. CF can be a tough road, and the first hurdle we're going to aim for is having your child regain their birth centile. That's pretty common. And where are you looking for support? Are you looking to other parents of children with CF? I think that's really natural. And so the space to stay, though, might be within your own child's age cohort, where you're not looking ahead too far. I had one parent who was really struggling. Their child was gaining weight fine, but I just kept getting the feeling that they were overfeeding their child because he had really terrible reflux. I mean, thankfully, he was a happy spitter and he, seemed to be doing okay. But she had read then on social media about children with CF with G-tubes. And she did not want her child to have a G-tube. So we had that conversation. Yes, in the past, like 25% of my practice had kids with G-tubes, but it's so much less common now. Adolescence, as Lily pointed out, is a time of huge change. We all survived adolescence, although I don't know if any of us would want to go back there again. It's a time of great transition for both weight and size, but also the redistribution of body fat. And that's, something when an adolescent is comparing themselves to social media, they may think, oh, okay, I'm going to develop this breast size, or my thighs are going to look this way. But if they have the knowledge that we come in all shapes and sizes from an earlier age, it can help with that transition. And the other thing is, sometimes we have parents at this point who might be saying, well, I want my child to gain weight, because they're visibly changing, but I don't want them to gain too much weight because I don't want them to struggle like I did with my body image when I was in middle school, but really, we talk about the physiology of what that weight gain means and how important it is for hormone development and other processes. And also, that's how your children are going to get taller. And talking about their bodies in a positive way and helping them navigate them is actually going to help them more in the long run to develop a positive body image and a healthy body. So one thing I talk about, because sometimes parents, we haven't seen them for 3 months, maybe we haven't seen them for 6 months. We had a whole pandemic when we didn't see people for a while. And oftentimes parents would really kind of emphasize all of these changes in their child's body. And the child, you had to really read the room and see the look on their face to see if they were taking this in a positive or negative way. And I always tried to couch what had happened to them as appropriate developmentally, just so that child, adolescent, is reassured that what's happening to them is developmentally normal. We come in all shapes and sizes. And as I said, I think that's something that we need to emphasize from the beginning, and helping our caregivers accept their bodies and genetics, and then passing that on to their children. And it can be tough to talk back to society's pressure to be a certain weight and size. So as providers, we want to listen carefully to what matters. We don't want to assume anything about someone's lifestyle or behaviors based on their weight. And we want to talk about the habits of health rather than focus on weight. And then interventions to improve weight, not weight loss. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend the Tips for CF Care Teams, Conversations About Body Image from the Mental Health Advisory Committee. And actually, I have the handout linked in my presentation. So you can go inside the app and pull up that handout. You can send it to yourself. I also I heard a wonderful talk yesterday. I don't know if anybody heard Steph Hansen talk, and I really loved hearing her say that her CF team was a safe space. So we want to be that safe space and just be open to whatever our families and patients have to tell us. In PEP training, I think it's some great practices that we learned how to set up the appointment, asking what are the things that are on your list that you want to discuss today. And then when things come up, we don't have to have all the answers, but we know we can say, tell me more. So healthy habits are really the most powerful things and bring about the most positive physiological changes. So just teaching our families to eat well, exercise well, and rest well will help them develop an improved sense of well-being, self-esteem, a better relationship with food, and also physiological benefits, improved blood pressure, and lipid panels. In terms of our documentation, we want to make sure that we're aligning our messages in this area. We often partner with each other. I often partner with our social workers to have discussions with patients. I would say I always do, since we have multidisciplinary visits. And when documenting, because our families can read all of our notes now, consider language in terms of weight, just talking about a higher BMI versus labeling it some type of obesity, and then using positive descriptions, appropriate weight gain and growth, getting healthy, sturdy, and robust. And for patients on modulators with weight changes, just acknowledging their past efforts and just that the recommendations for eating in CF have really changed. And the other thing that I find is that sometimes when people are struggling with weight in the past, I may have been saying, oh, you can use healthy fats and give them avocado. But when they were home and they were feeling that stress at the dinner table, they gave their child anything that they would eat. And that's what their child developed a preference for. So we really need to be compassionate about that. When we don't see someone for 3 months, I think it's, I work with children, so sometimes they've really changed, but we really want to give non-appearance-based compliments, and this is a whole list of them. I can share my slides. Just saying, it is so nice to see you. It is always good to see you goes a long way. And then we want to model healthy body image for young people. We don't want to talk about our own struggles with weight. We don't want to say, oh, I think I'll stand in this crowded room because it burns more calories. We don't need to give any of those messages at all. We want to really develop a value system and model that's based on internal values. And then finally, what's our own body story? It's beneficial to explore our own biases towards weight. If we want people to be healthy, but we still want them to lose weight, there's some friction there that doesn't align. And also, what's our own relationship to our own body and our own body story, and does that need work? There are some resources that are available from the Body Positive Project that are free, and also from Body Trust. And then if you want to look at that and you feel like you need more work, there are places to go from there. In exploring the body story, and I got these from the Body Trust website, I think it's helpful as a tool to use with patients, but it's also a helpful tool just in exploring our own relationship with body image. Just what are our memories of having a body? And if our body wrote us a letter, what would it say? And if you wrote a letter to your body, what would you say? So one of the things that helps counteract some of the negative things that we see in media is building something positive, just cultivating your own positive images and quotes that are meaningful to you. And these are some of the ones that are meaningful to me. And here's some other resources. If you've never seen this Body Image and Cystic Fibrosis Handbook, is from 2019. It was written by Jacqueline Didsbury, who was a psychiatrist living with CF. And it's from a partnership that she did with the UK Trust, and it's just excellent. But then there's some other things on here. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Liz. That was really beautiful and powerful. Next, we have Alyssa Denning coming to us from Phoenix Children's Hospital. Is it Children's or just Phoenix? Okay.
All right. Hi, thank you so much for having me. Okay. My name's Alyssa Denning. I'm the adult cystic fibrosis dietitian at Phoenix Children's. I kind of have I feel like a unique perspective. I started working in cystic fibrosis just after Trikafta came out. So I've worked with adults for pretty much my entire career, but I did not have the prior experience with the cystic fibrosis diet. So I kind of came in real quick in terms of trying not to focus on weight and cultivating a more body positive within my practice with my patients. I have no relationships to disclose in this presentation. I am going to focus more on the social media aspects that I come across with my adults, that I come across with myself, that friends and family all come across. And Lily and Liz did great on presenting what other things to do with their patients as well, to just cultivate that body positivity. But I do want to go back in terms of just this brief history of BMI. It's kind of where our language with overweight, obesity came from. And it's something that I do educate a lot of my patients about, just because they have grown up a lot with emphasis on their weight and their BMI. So it started off with Adolf Quetelet, probably pronouncing it wrong, but he devised this BMI scale. It was called the Quetelet Index first. It was intended for academic studies. It was never intended for healthcare, and it was just the study of what the average man is. Height versus weight on the average man. In 1972, that's when Ansel Keys coined the term body mass index. He came out, indicated it in the Journal of Chronic Disease, and it was a quick indicator of obesity. Now, where he got a lot of these numbers in the BMI scale was from life insurance policies at that time, which primarily Caucasian, rich men, middle-aged men. And then in 1998, that's when the BMI scale kind of changed their categories for what normal weight and obesity are. CNN also had one that came, article that came out, and it's actually kind of funny. I did find the picture and I forgot to put it on here, but their line was millions of Americans became fat on Wednesday, even if without gaining a pound. So kind of shocking. Now there is a podcast, I'll mention this again later, but the Maintenance Phase podcast has a fantastic episode called the Body Mass Index, and it is so good, and I have become so obsessed with this podcast. So when it comes to BMI, there is always like the body image assumptions. When you put something on paper, such as your BMI, so your weight, your height, anything like that, versus what the actual image assumption is, are very, very different things. So just to kind of put into perspective, I'm going to use Khloe Kardashian because she's just everywhere. So 2008 to 2009, she was considered the fat sister of the Kardashian clan. She was considered overweight in BMI. She was not obese. Now you go on later, 2016, she has revenge body with Khloe Kardashian. She's lost some weight. She is in a normal, healthy BMI range. I wouldn't even say actually healthy, but she's within a normal BMI range, praised and everything. Now, I did put her height on here because she's a very tall woman. So, well, I want to say very tall, but she's a taller woman. So she's naturally going to have this more weight on her, or higher scale weight. And then currently, she is praised for how she looks now. She has lost a significant amount of weight. Her BMI is essentially like 17.6. It's underweight. So, but she is considered looking amazing. She's been able to lose this weight, all these other things. Now, going on to more body image assumptions, before going into these images, kind of when it comes to like BMI, when you, again, putting it on paper versus seeing it in person, a lot of people consider like normal or underweight being a healthy, within their body. And then overweight and obesity is when people are assuming that they're unhealthy, that they have some kind of weight stigma, they have some kind of weight condition. Again, we all know too, BMI just doesn't accumulate for much of anything else besides height versus weight. And then an interesting thing is with BMI too, is initially when that scale came out, they didn't have the percentile for children. I didn't know that until recently when I was going back on the history of it. Now, going off of these body image assumptions, or even just these image assumptions, just going off of these influencers, models, I have a couple of them. So this is, she's a runway model. Her name is Chanel Inman. Now, I got all of the information, honestly, off of Google, which kind of horrifies me that I can find a person's weight and height and their like BMI status. I hate that on a quick Google search. So this is Chanel Inman. Essentially, she is approximately 110 pounds. Her BMI is approximately 15.8. She is somebody who, if I ever saw her in my clinic, I would be horrified. And I would be probably panicking a little bit and thinking like this, this is not healthy. What are we doing? What happened? And obviously we work in cystic fibrosis. There's other aspects of it that there's might have been an exacerbation, kind of questioning lung function, other things going on. Now, as dietitians too, even just looking at her, you go off the nutrition-focused physical exam, just seeing her clavicle and then her shoulders and kind of being able to see that entire part aspect of her, seeing her ribs, her cheeks, we can essentially just consider this a malnutrition diagnosis. Now, then going on the other side for a male aspect, this is Lucky Blue Smith, another runway model. He's approximately 143 pounds, BMI 19.4. He is within a normal range, but still, even with any of my patients that I've seen, anybody who I see with my even friends, family, I still don't like if there is on there like BMI is just going to be around. So I still take it into consideration. It's just not a great one, but I don't like to see anybody under 20. And I feel like with men being at 19, I feel like that's still pretty thin, and they could be healthy, but it depends on the person. Now, if you are a millennial like me and you grew up with the whole differences on these body images and just this critical view of women in early 2000s, 90s, Jessica Simpson, she was criticized for her body in this picture. You go back to look at it, she was a size 5 to 6. Okay. No? Perfect. Okay, so she was not in this like fat range at all. And then going off of, so Dwayne The Rock Johnson, he's a stereotypical what obesity for men can look like. He's also Samoan. He naturally has a larger body. No matter if he didn't have like a less, 1% body fat or something like that, he's still gonna have a larger body. That's just his size. But he's one of those, I guess I would say, stereotypical BMI people, just example of how it's wrong. So another one, Renee Zellweger in Bridget Jones's Diary. She was considered like the fat friend. She was considered overweight. She was just the big girl. She was 136 pounds. Approximate BMI was 23. This definitely ruined my body image and thinking that 136 pounds was overweight and was unhealthy. Then, luckily now, we have people like Lizzo, and I love her. She has such an amazing, not only body image for herself, but she is very healthy. She works out daily. Her intake and her food intake is very balanced. She was vegan for a little while. I'm not sure if she still is, but she even was following a vegan diet. And I remember talking to friends and they were saying, kind of judging her. And I sat there and I was like, Lizzo's vegan and she works out daily. And then you see her energy on stage. Like, that's just how she is. She does have PCOS, which, if studying women and women's hormones, that's a whole different story. And then you have the guys from Top Gun. When I was looking at their stuff, I was like, now this is the male objectification side that Lily was talking about. Now, looking at their stuff too, Miles Teller did have an interview of his diet and his exercise routine, and it was extensive and tiring just reading it. They very low body fat percentage. I know the article was saying it was definitely less than 10%. So they were just very much in this restricted, strict lifestyle at the time. And then you have Ashley Graham, runway model. She's considered plus size runway model. She's also very, very healthy, works out daily, balanced diet. She talks about her intake, her body image, her workout routines all the time. And then she's had, I think now 3 kids, and one of them is a set of twins. She's a size 16. And in my opinion, that might be on the larger side of clothes. And I have a slide on that one too. But she's size 16. That's not what I would consider as plus size either. Now, the effect of media and body image. In 1995, there were girls, secondary school age girls on an island in Fiji. This article specifically in this study was between 1995 and 1998. Television, disordered eating, and young women in Fiji, negotiating body image and identity during a rapid social change. Television was introduced to them for 3 years, interviewed these school-age girls in 1995, and then re-interviewed them in 1998. The amount that their body image has changed was significant. And eating disorders actually went up. Prevalence of eating disorders went up, not necessarily that they were diagnosed. But they wanted to look more like, and this is mostly, again, towards girls. So they wanted to look like the women that they saw on media, that they saw on television. They wanted to lose weight. They wanted to wear, even like wearing clothes differently, even having lighter skin too there was just a massive difference in just a short amount of time, in 3 years. So, like I said, there was going to be a slide on, sizes in the fashion industry. Now, this one, a lady named, where is that? It's Zoe Evans. I missed that card. So this lady in the UK, she bought 4 jeans, all the size of 18, off of or online. All of these jeans are size 18. They're all very different. So obviously, they're all different sizes. I do like to utilize how, instead of discussing weight, how your clothes are feeling on you. If you've noticed any changes, they're baggier, they're tighter, anything like that. But when it comes to at least women's clothing, I know men can experience this too, but mostly with women's clothing, it's really not a great indicator. And this actually did happen with one of my friends. A couple years ago, she had 2, and I couldn't find the picture. Unfortunately, she couldn't find it either because I wanted to add it. But she had 2 to 3 pairs of jeans that were the same size and the same brand. But she bought them a couple years apart, and they were still size difference. So they had like the top gray ones, it was that size, and then probably like that middle, the lighter blue. 2 different sizes, same brand, same size. Now, in terms of what we are currently seeing in social media, I'm going to go over some of them. It's definitely very much a diet culture aspect, and I'll go over these a little bit more in detail. But what I eat in a week, the worst trend that I have ever seen. I hate it. There's Fit Check, food and meal alternatives. Then there's also the health trends, like we have all kind of seen those. There's GLP-1s, there's CMOS, there's the cortisol, and that does affect everyone's body image. And then I wanted to go a little bit in regards to intuitive eating and kind of what social media ends up putting as intuitive eating. So to start with, what I eat in a day or a week. Now, there are positives and there are negatives to all of these. So I'm going to go over them pretty quickly. But the issues with this one is there are some influencers that I've seen that says what I eat in a day to stay skinny. That's horrifying because it is barely anything. I have a couple bites of this at this time. I wait 5 hours. I have a couple bites of this just to satiate and not have the hunger pains. This does open up for additional judgment because on the other side, there are also some people who are what I eat in a day as a fat person. It's actually a very well-balanced diet. It has no issues that really, I think as dietitians, that we would see. But people will go in the comments and say, obviously this isn't real because you're not showing everything that you're eating. There are benefits to it. Again, I think it does help people to see how much, like athletes, how much they do actually have to eat. And then also it gives, some healthier eating options. It gives me ideas sometimes because I know how to cook, but I don't know what to cook ever. So social media, I do that all the time. Like I said, meal and snack ideas. And then there's this fit check where mostly women, also men too, they are predominantly Caucasian female. They do have a higher socioeconomic status, but they show this is what I'm wearing today. This is cute, different angles, everything. There is not much body representation in these trends. I wish there was. Now, the benefit that I see in this is I'm not a very fashionable person at all. So to go and get some inspiration for different kinds of clothes to wear, I go to the fit checks because I'm like, well, what should I wear today? If I can live in scrubs, I do live in scrubs and leggings, so when I actually have to put on real clothes, it's a little hard for me. So we have these food and meal alternatives, like being on a fitness journey, wanting to change something higher, go lower protein. Now, there was, for a little while, the cauliflower everything. Change everything out for cauliflower. And then there's also, I feel like right now, the cottage cheese everything. Just everything. And it's not good. So I don't know why people keep doing it. But problem, it does take away major food groups. You're switching cauliflower for these carbohydrates, for rice, for these good things that your bodies are actually needing. Definitely not individualized. And like I said before, these just don't taste good at all. Case in point, these candied frozen Jell-O grapes. I tried this. I wanted to like this so much. Like my favorite candy is Sour Patch Kids. And you use sugar-free Jell-O in grapes and you freeze them. Oh my gosh, it was so gross. It was so bad. And so I had, I think, like 3 grapes and I threw away the rest of them and went and bought Sour Patch Kids. It does help to encourage like cooking, exploring different foods. If you have kids, if you're somebody who is just not a big vegetable person, just have an aversion to it, it can help to hide the vegetables. And then, again, it encourages cooking at home. And there's been some bad recipes though. There's been these workout routines. So these 5-minute abs that everybody has all over the place. If I could have a 6-pack in 5 minutes, that would be awesome. That is not the case. And then, with men, they have these extreme full body workouts that are just within 30 minutes. So again, they are not individualized, and they're usually these fitness influencers who are advanced. These are aimed for intermediate and advanced levels. I come across them a lot with my men in my clinic. They have never worked out a day in their life, and then they're looking up these YouTube videos of these guys who do this for a living, and then they end up getting an injury because they're just not being safe. They don't really have the correct posture to be doing these advanced workouts. So it does aim for a specific body shape, which might not be your genetics. There's also the programs that are very expensive. They can be like $200 and $250, at least that much. And that was like maybe a couple years ago when I last looked that up. But also very expensive for something that's not individualized, for something that can end up harming. So it does help with physical activity. It encourages to try different ones. You might find that you like to do free weights instead of machines. It does improve confidence in, specifically for girls who I've seen in the free weight section. This is something that I do struggle with a lot of my girls is I'm like, you can go and start throwing your elbows in the free weight section to go and use these and kick the men out who are taking up the entire space. It is okay. They're not as confident as I would like to see them. So then there's these health trends that, just go around. And obviously, and this affects one's body image just because most of these will end up promoting weight loss and saying like, this is going to fix all your ailments when it goes so much deeper. Usually a supplement. The chlorophyll, when that thing came out, I was working in skilled nursing facility and the nurse came up to me when I went in that day and was like, Alyssa, I need you, should I start adding chlorophyll? What does this do? And I looked at her and I was just like, her name's Christina, and I still talk to her, but I was just like, Christina, eat your vegetables. That is all it is. It will fix your GI symptoms because you're having vegetables, green vegetables. And she's like, oh, okay. So it can substitute for whole foods. Again, my biggest thing is it's not individualized. It's very different for everybody. Now this one too, CMOS. I just had a conversation with my friend last night who is very, very influenced. And she said that she bought CMOS. She wanted me to buy it first and try it before she does. I said no. So she says that she's going to try the CMOS, and then she was asking all these different things, these different symptoms that she was having. And I was like, just eat like normal, healthy food. But even here, so the benefits that it says that CMOS has: ease joint pain, boost metabolism, support heart health, appetite control, natural decongestion, enhance thyroid function. It says remarkable nutrition. Who knows what that means? Promotes mental health, supports immune system. And okay, I'm over, so I'm gonna go fast. But these aren't, I don't know, it's promoting too much. So again, though, it can expose to healthy eating, and individuals seek care. Now, real quick, with intuitive eating, I am a very big fan of this. However, a lot of people have gone the wrong way with it. And they say, again, going back to that very restrictive eating where it's like, I will take 3 bites of one thing so that I get rid of hunger pains. That's not intuitive eating. That is very restrictive. So it does promote healthy at every size. Listen to your body cues. It does do overall health. Now with these, all the diets, just everything in there. There's good versus bad. The fitness magazines are always promoting some kind of diet. Also goes along with men. So men have issues, or most of the trends are with women. Men have them too. Now, it's displaying optimal health, but I wanted to really give this example too. Hugh Jackman as Wolverine over the years has significantly changed, and he has still been considered an ideal. It's a lot different. The ideal standards for men also changes with time, as was pointed out earlier. So fashion and grooming are also, and glow ups are also trends. So quickly, reminders. Influencers are not professionals. Now this one, little to no health education. Xana Diart, she is the vegan raw fruit influencer who passed away from malnutrition in 2023. Now filters and angles, these two right here, that filter is insane. These two, Diana Soroki and Callie Thorpe, this is photoshopped, completely photoshopped. And then the Try Guys also did a complete Photoshop. Then these 3, I'm almost done. These 3 are AI influencers, so going off of Lily's as well. Now there are social media trends, positive ones. Kicking me off the stage, I get it, I know. I'm almost done. So these are the positive social media trends that have come out that I think are great. They're really promoting body positivity. And I will have these out too. These are the people who I always recommend to follow instead. There's different podcasts, there's different influencers. Now, these are not all of them. These are just a couple of them. Food Science Babe. I love her. If there's any food trend, I always go to her. And then Abby Sharp is also a really good one. So there's men and women on both of them. Again, podcast, Maintenance Phase, I love. Ben Mudge being a CF patient, and he's a bodybuilder. And I have a lot of stuff because I am also passionate about this. I recommend a lot of the times taking a social media detox. Can last anywhere from a weekend to a couple months to infinity. You can always change your patient's algorithm. I will talk to them about doing that too, about how to change your algorithm. I do not recommend the TikTok tarot readers. Stay away from them too. These are just concerns and how to bring that up with a patient. This is what I do all the time. I end up researching what a media trend is, and then I'll express it to my patient who's asking about it. I'm definitely over, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alyssa. That was awesome. So our last speaker today is Rachel Higgins. Hi, Rachel. Rachel was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at birth, and so she's here today to give us her very unique perspective on this topic. Rachel has been very involved in our local chapter in Portland, Maine. So I'm really happy to have her up on the national stage today. So thank you, Rachel. There you go. Now you're up on the screen.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to me, and you'll probably hear me cough. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you to Lauren, and she's the dietitian at my clinic, Maine Health in Portland, Maine, and to Emma Lyons as well, the co-chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm also thankful for the large coffee I had this morning, so hopefully I'm not too jittery. I was diagnosed, as Lauren said, with cystic fibrosis 57 years ago this month, and immediately started the journey of hospital stays, procedures, IV antibiotics, GI, diabetes, and other issues common to CF patients. Excuse me. My parents' first child, my sister Renee, was born with CF, and sadly, due to complications, she died at just 5 days old. My brother Tom is healthy, and when I was born, I was immediately rushed into surgery and diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. I was hospitalized for the first 3 months of my life, having multiple procedures and medications. Thankfully, my parents visited often, but unfortunately, in the 1960s, they didn't get much time to hold their infant who was very sick until near discharge day. My mother definitely made up for that important bonding time when I was home. She had such an incredible mothering instinct that the tremors I had developed due to intense medical intervention went away without the introduction of phenobarbital, which had been prescribed for me. She instead decided to do things on her own by holding me, comforting me, etc. She was amazing. And this was all the while they had a 2-year-old, a very active 2-year-old at home, praying and waiting to meet his sister. What was rarely, if ever, talked about was how CF affected patients in terms of peer interactions, body image, and just being different. The goal was to keep us alive, and I am incredibly grateful for all the efforts of all my doctors and my support staff, as they are some of the best in the business. Growing up, I always compared myself to other girls my age, constantly waiting and wanting to look just like them. I was chronically underweight, underdeveloped, and often made fun of during those pivotal school years, like so many kids are in general. I ate healthy foods, as my parents had a bountiful garden and loved cooking. My school lunches consisted of high-calorie, high-fat, and protein-packed foods. My mother was a health food lover, despite my attempts at trying to trade my healthy foods for candy bars, ring dings, and whatever else I could get my hands on, as often as possible. I would also supplement meals with those cardboard-tasting Ensure shakes. Does anyone remember those? I think they've evolved from the time I had them. Whatever I could do to get extra calories. Taking enzymes before meals or snacks was a no-brainer, but in school, I vividly recall doing my best to hide taking them by stuffing them all in my mouth at once, not taking them at all, or in some cases, tossing them away in the trash after lunch. This was an attempt at being just like everyone else. Unfortunately, not taking them led to a number of consequences, including incredibly bad stomach cramps, the janitor finding them in the trash, and my mother getting a call from the nurse. It was the 1970s, long before social media influenced our world, but I was clearly influenced by my peers, what I saw on television and magazines, and what was deemed as perfect. Fast forward to my early 20s, I was very sick, extremely thin, admitted to the hospital once again for a CF exacerbation, and told what I had seemed to be a form of anorexia that many people with CF can experience due to the inability to eat and absorb enough food due to the high production of mucus in our bodies. I was once again comparing myself to so many others silently, not always being influenced in the most positive ways and hiding a huge piece of myself. Food was a task to check off my list of therapies. It was not particularly enjoyable. Excuse me. I developed CF-related diabetes in my 20s and worked hard at hiding yet another piece of myself in order to fit the norm. In fact, some friends may be learning that about me for the first time. I recall the endocrinologist looking at me a bit concerned at the ease at which I learned how to give myself insulin as needed. This was just another therapy to add, I thought, not seeing the enormity or absorbing the emotional side of this new development. I started living on my own in my early 20s in various apartments with friends and doing my best to navigate all my therapies as best I could, as the vest had not yet been invented. I worked a lot, sometimes 2 jobs, attended college, and did all the fun things 20-year-olds do, and ate whatever foods I could easily make and on a very low budget. The internet would have been so useful back then for food options and discover recipes rather than eating mac and cheese, SpaghettiOs, and pizza. Looking back at that enormous undertaking, it was no wonder I returned to the comfort of my parents' home a few times when I needed rest, great food, and to recharge. Body mass index, which is something that was talked about today, was a term being introduced at clinic, I think in my 30s. Being a bit competitive, I always wanted to reach the ideal weight and body mass image number. I religiously recall weighing myself at home, especially on days leading up to clinic visits, forcing food on myself and exercise when I was exhausted. It was devastating to me that I never achieved my weight goal, and soon doctors started talking to me about a feeding tube. I refused that idea and vowed to gain weight on my own. I just needed time. I recall watching that BMI number being calculated and refusing to admit defeat outwardly. Leaving clinic visits during those decades left me feeling defeated and incredibly frustrated. In hindsight, wanting to be like my friends and family who appeared healthy to me, or what I saw as healthy, was a false narrative. And I quickly learned some focused on their own body image issues. Some of my friends and even family that did not have cystic fibrosis struggled to compare themselves to others, whether it was wanting to be bigger, smaller, etc. It was not an easy conversation to have with friends, friends and family, when I was the person with the huge bag of snacks wherever I went. It was a running joke that if you were hungry and we were together, you would ask, Rach, what's in your snack bag? Little did they know it was a calculated move on my part, so I never went without calories or fear of low blood sugar. BMI was so arbitrary as it was a calculation based on a formula and not the individual. I am so happy that more information is out and weight conversations are being handled a bit more delicately now and seem to be catered to the patient's specific situation. I remember going back to a school reunion and opening up to my friends about my CF, thinking it was going to be a big revelation. They all said to me, Rach, we all knew. My disease was only being concealed by myself, and no one ever talked about it. That hit me hard. I wasted so much energy wanting to be just like everyone else when I didn't have to. I think I was around 30-something when social media first started to emerge, and although I was still primarily influenced by my peers and fantastically unrealistic images on television and magazines, home computer screens were now introducing the same false narrative on how to be thinner, better, stronger, faster, etc. Then came phones that captured all of this in the palm of your hand 24/7. Privately having struggled to look normal or healthy my entire life, phones made it a lot harder, and these devices constantly refreshed the ideal body image and type. Advertisers crept into search engines like Facebook, Instagram, Google, and as we know now, whatever you want to research or see, we are then served with a barrage of images, ideas, and heavy suggestions. I cannot imagine how young people with those devices handle it today. I credit my brother and sister-in-law for not giving their kids social media or devices that would allow them to view social media until they were in their late teens. Excuse me. Where am I? Okay. Although I was a smart individual, I was incredibly immature with the idea of comparing myself to others and the ever-changing image of perfect. I was captivated by others' body image, what they ate, how they exercised, and to look a certain way, exactly like we were seeing on the screens today. I wanted the flat tummy, the strong body, and wasn't even close to that. I loved sugar and not kale. My entire life, so many have said the words to me, "You are so lucky to be thin and not have to work at it." One very influential person once said to me, "I wish I was skinny like you and could eat whatever I wanted." I recall pausing for a second before responding, "Well, with this skinny body comes a lot of complications." They knew I had CF and could see I was struggling. The outside picture is not always a true representation of the person's inside goal for health. At least that was my story. Influences of all types, including medical professionals, can play such a huge role in body image. Social media has been a catalyst for both positive and negative influences. One huge positive for me is getting to communicate and see via the screen so many other CF patients. When I was a kid, we would have CF support groups where all of us were in a room together, and that is terrifying. On the screen, there's an image of me doing a commercial and a local ad for CF. Those two little kids in the ad with me had CF. And that to me is scary. I loved how younger generations are talking about things with ease and their day in the life journeys. I recall being on a panel discussion when I was around 40 and another girl with CF who was around 18, and she was a wealth of information for this girl. I was in awe of how open she was, talking about all aspects of her disease to an audience of strangers, doctors, and the like. Her friends all knew about her CF, and she said, "Well, it's a part of me. Why would I hide it?" That statement blew my mind. Of course, I remember thinking, it is a part of us. It's nothing to hide. Almost from that moment on, I started opening up and being more vocal. Baby steps for me. But she helped me come out of my CF shell, and she was 22 years younger than me. She taught me so much about acceptance of this disease, even though she was struggling with more health complications than I was at the time. I'm happy to say we are still friends today. Before modulators, I had to stop working an incredible career in the music business that I loved, because not only had my lung function declined dramatically, but so did my weight. I went through the arduous testing process for a double lung transplant. I started Trikafta 2 weeks prior to being listed for transplant, and thankfully, to date, I have not had to endure that monumental surgery and was never actively listed. I still do all of my therapies multiple times a day. I've never abandoned any of them, although I would love to. I still carry my vest around wherever I go, my nebs, etc. But I do all of that to hold the position that I've acquired, and it's worth every moment. Since the introduction of modulators, many conversations surrounding body image and PFTs have changed in clinics and among CF peers. I recently met a girl with CF online that is categorized as obese, as modulators have allowed her to gain more weight than expected. What do we do with this? Do we introduce yet another medication? Do we revamp the CF meal plan? I hope each CF patient continues to be treated individually, as CF is so unique to each person. Will CF patients continue to compare themselves with society's norm, or will that slowly fade away? Modulators are miracles for some, complex for others, and unattainable for many. I talked a lot about my own influencers, and many were medical professionals that I listened to, that listened to my concerns, worked alongside me, and did their best to get me back on track when I veered off and wanted to do things my own way, which if you haven't noticed, I'm a bit stubborn and I like to do that. The only negative experience I had with a doctor who looked at me as a very sick 20-year-old, and he literally said, "Well, this is how it goes with CF. You are not going to get any better." At that time, he was the head pulmonologist at my CF clinic. Shocked and incredibly terrified, thinking, well, I guess this is the end for me, my mother immediately found a new clinic for me to attend. Although some patients don't seem to engage in much conversation, we definitely hear your words. I am incredibly grateful to my team of CF professionals, and I have learned to talk openly about my CF journey with friends on different social media platforms, as well as the Great Strides walks and other opportunities in the community, in the CF community. It is growth in the best possible way to know my surviving this beast is a group effort. My husband, Tim, has also learned so much about CF and continues to support me and help me navigate these later years in life. My nieces, nephews, and now 4 little great-nephews fill my heart and keep me focused on all the positives of this complicated life. I no longer live life in secrecy about my disease or strive to look like anyone else. I'm finally happy in my own skin. Perhaps that came with age or the modulators that helped my body properly absorb nutrition, as well as all the life lessons, multiple mistakes, and scars these years have given me. I hope and pray that one day we will all be sitting here talking about the cure that was found, so no parent or child has to endure the complications of cystic fibrosis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you to all of our speakers here today. I'd like to invite everyone up to join in our question and answer discussion. And it looks like we have some pretty good questions rolling in from audience members, so thank you all for that as well. Should I just stay up here? Should I just stay up? Oh, sure. Okay, I'll just stay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I am going to start us off with this one. How can caregivers help to foster a positive body image if they themselves struggle with body dysmorphia, disordered eating behaviors, etc.? And I will expand this question and say, how can caregivers help to foster a positive body image in general as well? Liz, I know you spoke to this a little bit in your presentation, and I'll kind of throw this to all of the speakers to see if we can generate some discussion around this topic. Yes. Where to go? How can caregivers foster a positive body image when they themselves struggle with body dysmorphia, body image concerns, and disordered eating?
That's an excellent. Whoops. Are we on?
Oh, no. Where's our AV guy? Do you want to come up here? Sorry, Liz. Thanks.
That is an excellent question. I have had colleagues in the past who struggled with eating disorders and disordered eating, and I think it's next to impossible to really foster body positivity if you're really struggling yourself, because I think our patients can spot a hypocrite a mile away. Especially children can spot a hypocrite. I know my children call me out on my hypocrisy at times. So I would really encourage someone to try and get help. And Lily, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I think that there is a role, I think, especially with caregivers, and I think having, mental health coordinators involved in clinic is really important. I know I have these conversations fairly regularly with caregivers alone, separate from the child, but kind of thinking about not only in regards to body image, but other parts of their well-being that they're concerned about that may be modeled or passed down to their kids. And I think that, having those conversations and building that awareness is the first step. I think also guiding parents towards appropriate therapeutic interventions is also really critical. I think it is very possible to struggle with emotional challenges and also be a wonderful role model for one's children. I think that it requires mindfulness and attention to one's own patterns and how one comes across, and maybe even more so than someone who's not struggling with those challenges. But I do believe it's possible, and I think it's a part of our role to discuss that with families and guide them towards appropriate resources so they can get treatment, and talk about how do we have these conversations and give them the space, again, sometimes separate from the kiddo, to talk about those things. As my team will say, I'm like the big proponent of kicking both kids out, parents out. We have some flexibility in our pediatric clinics to do that. And I like having those spaces to talk either one-on-one with kids about what they're dealing with, but also one-on-one with parents as well. So I think, we often, because of, space is a real issue everywhere, I think. But if there are space options, like even a consultation room, sometimes having those separate conversations is really meaningful for parents, because they're also not usually going to bring these things up in front of kids if they're struggling with it. So I know our team really works at having some of that separate space and time.
Lily, stay there. Okay. This question is for you. Okay. Lily, can you go into some of the positives in social media that you weren't able to get to? Oh, yeah.
So with social media, there's like a whole body positivity movement, which I think is really cool. And we know that, this modeling goes both ways. So when we see folks modeling love and acceptance of their bodies, and also bodies doing cool things, my favorite new influencer, she's influencing me, is, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce her name, is Ilona Meyer from the Olympics. She is like the coolest, and I don't know, she's a badass. She's an Olympic rugby player who has been really outspoken about women's bodies. And we can direct people towards those types of models. I think the Olympics were really cool too, just for that reason, because there were so many amazing, strong bodies. And the Paralympics too, like so many amazing people doing amazing things. One of the really cool things that as I was preparing for this talk, saw, especially in regards to typically like kind of marginalized groups, and really bringing awareness to how some of these filters can actually be really wonderful and useful, is in the trans community. So I think for many people who are either who identify as trans, or who are in transition, or are just exploring, some of the filters and some of those tools, which are amazing, I mean, they're despite this dark side, they are truly amazing to be able to kind of try on these different identities for oneself. And it can really lead to a sense of like gender euphoria and feeling like, oh my God, like this is me. I feel like this is really who I am. And I think that that's another really positive side. Also, there's been some research on like visual stimuli that's not body based. So like, we're all familiar with memes, quotes, all these other types of visual stimuli. And those have actually been shown, especially when centered around body image, to be really like boosting of self-confidence and like giving support and more positive kind of cognitions. So those are some of the positives.
We're working on the last slide. We'll put that up right now. Thanks, Lauren. I think this question is for all of our speakers. Do you have suggestions on how to discuss labs, PFTs, and weight without contributing to self-objectification?
So that's a very good question. In general, so weight in and of itself, I usually do not bring up in clinic at all. The only time that I really actually bring up weight is if somebody had a significant weight loss or weight gain in a short amount of time. So if we see them like every 3 months and they suddenly lost or gained 20 pounds, that's really the only part of the weight that I'm going to address. There's usually another aspect to it. Because they were sick, they started on Ozempic, they started a different medication, like a antidepressant that causes weight gain. They were on prednisone, something like that. So I try to get kind of the full story of it. When it comes to PFTs, PFTs and labs, I usually leave it up to the provider with the PFTs. And then when it comes to labs, it's really vitamins that I'm going to be looking at the most. And it comes down to like if they're vitamin deficient, I will talk to them, and I like to give everybody the reasoning for it. They might have known what vitamin D is good for and vitamin A is good for as a kid, or they were kind of said something that they know it's good for them. With a lot of my girls and my women, like vitamin A, I honestly, I tell them it's cell turnover. How I pass my RD exam is skincare with the vitamins. So I will tell them that too, what vitamin D is good for, especially in the psychosocial aspect. It has been found to be really good in terms of your brain chemistry. So I give them reasonings for why. If they're struggling with, or if their OGTTs are off a little bit, they're vitamin D deficient, there's an insulin sensitivity linked to that. So I try to give them more logic and overall health. But when it comes down to weight, majority of the time, I don't talk to them about it unless there's something significant that came up.
For children, sometimes, I'll always talk about trends. Sometimes I'll ask the family patient if they've seen their labs, PFTs, the providers will ask about the PFTs, but I'll ask if they've seen it first and if they have any questions or concerns. But sometimes you do get down to that really hard conversation where you have somebody who's, you're looking at a trend and it's really far away from the growth chart for a child, and it's really starting to affect their linear growth. And those conversations are never comfortable or rarely comfortable. And so then I try to bring in other team members, and we try to have a very supportive conversation. And sometimes the caregiver is on board with that conversation and they're really starting to see some truth about it, and sometimes they don't. But anyone have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll say something.
Yeah.
Having dealt with both the PFT and the body image scenario over the years in my own care, I would say if you could ask them how they feel before interjecting the numbers, the stats, the problems, the future, blah, 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 which I think now in clinic has been such a tremendous change from when I was a kid or a teenager, when those years are so crucial. In fact, for PFTs, I was at a sharp decline for several years, and my doctor, who is amazing, started the introduction of talking about lung transplant just very casually, not saying, oh my gosh, we need to get you in. It took him, I don't know, maybe 2 years before I was on board with it. And luckily, I wasn't at a place where I was in dire need of it when I started the process. But casually communicating overall, I think is the best way to get the patient to open up. I've developed such a relationship with my CF team that I feel like I can talk to them about anything, and I'm not going to be looked at differently. I'm not going to hear like little conversations in the hallway, because we can hear those. And it's just really the feeling of them all working as a team. And my doctor said to me once, he said, I'm very much like I need to know everything. I need to know what's going on. How do I compare, like I was talking about? He said, Rachel, PFTs are one element of your care. Your weight is one element. How are you feeling? That was a huge transition for me because at the time, even though my numbers weren't great, I felt good. I could still work. I could still do all the things. But gradually introducing things that made me think before I was forced into any position of doing anything differently. And just sprinkling in little changes, little suggestions without a forceful impact, I think is going to be amazing. And I think for the most part, other people that I speak to, it's being done now, but that really helped me kind of make my own decisions, even though those decisions were probably something I should have made long ago. But just hearing them gradually introduce change in a very gentle way was huge for me to make my own decision.
I just wanted to say, I think that is so cool that your provider approached that in that way. And I also love that it is anchoring the conversation in you and not like in the numbers. Like it's not, you're like, okay, these are the stats, like you need a lung transplant. That is dehumanizing. Yeah. That takes away the human being from the conversation. And
it was incredible.
Yeah,
was
that
incredible.
is such an awesome
Thanks,
way of
Dr.
doing it.
Zuckerman.
Just one more thing to add, now that you say that, in terms of weight, and if a patient specifically asks me about their weight, I do tell them it is one of those tools that we use, similar to how your blood pressure or your heart rate is. And a lot of the times too, if they go off on saying, I had a patient, like they just got into this overweight range of their BMI. And I was like, you know what, this is not an indicator of your health. I often use myself as an example because I sit there and I stand in front of them and I was like, I am technically considered obese. I don't feel obese. I don't have the obesity, I guess, related conditions that, people associate it with. And I'll ask them too. I'm like, do you consider me obese? And that's because I just gotten so comfortable with myself that I'd okay if they say yes. And they're just like, wait. So they sit there, and I've always had that higher weight on me. So then they sit there and they're like, oh, okay, no, that's not a good indicator for me.
I think we have time for one more question.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you feel like it's possible for us to continue this trajectory of focusing on eradicating fatness in patients and work on body positivity or body image?
I think it's going to be a continuing fight for the rest of our lives, for the rest of eternity, especially when it comes to still media and people seeing and basically glorifying these celebrities who are super thin and super skinny, which I guess that's the same word, but it's going to be a continuous fight. I don't think it's ever going to be eradicated. It is going to start early, and it's going to be something that I still work on with a lot of my patients. It's a fight.
I'm going to say, as long as we are living humans in a culture, we are never going to be able to eradicate the influence of that context. But as we move along, I was trying to buy glasses the other day, and I was like being marketed these like Ray-Bans that had it was like the tech ones that you can like have like on the screen, like on a screen in front of you, and put filters on your viewing of the world just like through your glasses. I was just like, I can't even go there. Just give me the simple ones. But those types of things are going to keep on coming. Technology is going to keep on coming. And I think it's incumbent upon us as providers in this area to realize that our patients are going to be using these things and to continue having conversations. I can't overstate this. Personal relationships have a huge impact on body image. That's from family, friends, providers. And so those things matter greatly, even if culture is doing a whole bunch of other shenanigans that doesn't help any of us.
And I think we need to keep having the conversation among providers.
I think that's time for us. Thank you, everyone, so much.